The genre known for its frights and gore have come a long way in gaming, and it needs to be said that at the turn of the century we had a number of horror gems that have certainly stuck around. Hello and welcome to Ischenko's list of top 5 classic horror games that are still worth playing today. We kick things off with a title I never got to play way back. In fact, I haven't even heard of it until recently, and I can now say I'm glad that the dark and moody Obscure decided to pop up in my recommends list. Right off the bat, something that grabbed me, a point that the game nails, is just how much of a 90s throwback it is. The school setting is a standout, and the characters have those old school stereotype vibes, which fits so well in with the setting. You can feel the influences such as the film The Faculty pumped into the veins of the game. Hydra Vision Entertainment, being a French developer, went above and beyond to get the pop culture American high school feel just right. Set in the fictional Leafmore High, you quickly find that things are not quite on the up and up, as its students tend to go missing. We kick things off where Kenny overstays his welcome after school hours and quickly gets added to the list of missing students. His friends decide that he's not going to be just another statistic, so they hang around after school the next day. But what a place Leafmore High turns out to be. As much as the town of Silent Hill and the Spencer Mansion are defining features of their games, I feel Leafmore stands to be as much a character in Obscure. This place is spooky as hell. As I played, I kept wondering who in their right mind would go to a school like this. It's that atmospheric, feeling less Bayside High and more Hill House in its scope. Even the gameplay takes strides to start itself in with the likes of Silent Hill and Resident Evil. With the camera looming over you every step of the way, there will be instances where you hear the horrors off screen before you get a chance to spot them. There's this constant level of tension. Every new room brings new possibilities to thin out your small group, as you'll find that death actually means a permanent loss to your roster. This is not only a gut punch, as story-wise a death will impact the entire group, but gameplay-wise it'll make your journey a bit tougher. Each character offers a specialization to help out, such as Ashley being a good fighter, or Stan lending you his lockpicking expertise. I found it quite fun to try out different character combinations, but at no point are any of them absolutely necessary for progression. In good old Resident Evil fashion, Obscure gives you limited saves. Though not being extremely harsh, the game won't allow you to save scum your way forward, which does add to the tension. There's also the option to have a second player jump in at any point to take over your AI partner. With a setting that conjures the right turn, the mysteries of Leafmore amps up the deeper you delve. Add in a cast of characters who offer fun gameplay and the possibility of taking on the game with an extra player. You definitely won't regret trying out this oldie that's easily worth many hours of creepy delight. We step from the gloomy hallways of school to the dismal confinement of prison. Way back during my younger years, I first laid eyes on The Suffering, and I played it for quite a bit. So it came as a pleasant surprise when I found the game now available on GOG all these years later. Where many horror games follow the survival route, building stress by way of your character's frailty and limited means of fighting back. Instead, Surreal Software took on a different approach. Here you step into the role of Muscleman Torque, a tough-as-nails badass thrown into prison for the alleged murder of his family. Torque barely settles into his cell when all hell breaks loose, and I mean that literally. Horrific monstrosities are unleashed on the prison, cutting guards and inmates alike. You quickly find guns and ammo aplenty, establishing Torque as a bona fide killing machine. Then there's the rage meter that'll slowly fill, through which you can turn yourself into a literal monster. Where the true horror seeps in is Abbott State Penitentiary itself, located on Carnet Isle, which the game will let you explore in all of its ghastly glory. This place is drenched in all manners of brutal history that you as player will get bombarded with in strange visions of past events. From witch burnings to an institute where they did all sorts of heinous experiments, to even a POW camp set during World War II. This island is one nasty piece of work. With Carnate's rich history coupled with the grisly events plaguing Torque's past, the developers ran with it to make for one brutally interesting journey. They intended for the monsters you face to be ingrained into the very island itself. Reflected in each of these monsters, you'll find the many ways people have died, from firing squads to being chained up and buried alive, even those who died via lethal injection. All manners of horrors were inflicted upon these poor tortured souls. Nearly as tormented as the monsters is the protagonist himself. Throughout the game, you'll constantly be faced with the haunting events from Torque's past. You'll see visions of his wife and children and the events surrounding their deaths. There's a darkness there that you'll get to explore, and I just love how this gets woven into the narrative. You'll also encounter inmates and prison guards who will be able to help out or kill. You'll be faced with scenarios where sometimes there can even be a neutral path, not helping out but also not acting like a total murderer. So you'll get to choose the fate of who the real Torque actually is. This brought a dynamic to the gameplay and its story, while adding some replayability to the title. With a premise that'll hook just about any player, what the Suffering offers though goes the extra mile. On the one hand, you have the grim backdrop that is Carnate Island, and along with that, the eerie journey of a protagonist whose tale is yours to define. It's easy to see why The Suffering was such a hit on release and why it's still worth a look all these years later. To this day I can recall all the buzz surrounding F.E.A.R, so when I finally got my sweaty palms all over the game, it certainly was a spectacle to my ill-prepared mind. Coming from Monolith Productions, a studio known for their quality action titles, you can understand why there was some anticipation leading up to F.E.A.R's launch. The studio's first game was the gruesome gore-faced Blood, a game I praised in the top 5 lists I made, so you can count me among those who had high expectations. As it stands, F.E.A.R is a nostalgic look at the times. The Japanese style of horror was all the rage, and a definite inspiration during Monolith's creation process. On top of that, there is a healthy dose of super soldiers to stand as your main foil. F.E.A.R has all the offerings to stand as a praiseworthy homage to themes over the decades. Since release, it's garnered acclaim from reviewers and players alike, while sales soared into the millions. It was a definite hit in every sense of the word and spawned a number of follow-ups. But as time goes by, it's a title that still deserves being played by players old and new. By its very design, F.E.A.R was made to crawl under your skin. You are a kick-ass soldier strapped with guns and grenades, so what could possibly affect you? That is one of the game's strengths though, as guns can only get you so far. As for the psychological imprints and inexplicable death surrounding you, at times you'll feel like you're in over your head. The horror in F.E.A.R has a cinematic style to it. As with its Japanese horror film inspirations, the character of Alma is a constant presence throughout. Whether through visions or randomly appearing, she's ever looming alongside main antagonist Paxton Fettel, an enigma of a person who you'll be hunting throughout the game. The developers were also heavily influenced by The Shining, so you can easily see a pattern in what drove the Terror Factor here. At the game's heart beats an action shooter though, where loads of soldiers were bearing down on you, and luckily in this department F.E.A.R shines just as bright. You step into the capable boots of someone known only as the Point Man. His past is murky as his skills are exceptional. That's not even an understatement, as you're an absolute one-man army. A way of displaying the Point Man's lethality is through a time-slowing mechanic that allows you to pick off foes with ease. Even so, the game is not a walk in the park. F.E.A.R was praised for its on-point AI, a fact that still stands out today. Enemy soldiers will coordinate, flank you or flush you out. They jump through windows or over obstacles. It happened more than once where I anticipate the enemies to do one thing, only for them to surprise me by doing the opposite. F.E.A.R came out at a time when titles were flooding the market, and yet managed to stand out among the rest. On the one hand, you'll find a shooter with fun and varied weapons to take down your foes. On the other, peppered throughout your nail-biting time of F.E.A.R, you'll feel your skin crawl as you try to survive a barrage of horrors being constantly thrown your way. We take a step back now from the action to focus on something a bit more methodical and surreal with Sanitarium. The first time I saw the game was in a magazine. Judging just by how bizarre those few screenshots looked, I knew I had to play it, and I can assure you the experience was pretty much as out there as the images implied. As for how the game actually came about, members of Dreamforce Entertainment, from creative lead to programmers to even artists, were bouncing ideas around over a meal of cheeseburgers. As they came up with concepts for the game, there were references to films such as 7 and 12 Monkeys, along with shows like The Outer Limits and The Twilight Zone. Safe to say their minds were leaning towards the creepy side of things. All ideas were on the table, but instead of only deciding on one, the project lead had the thought to simply bring everything together. All they needed was a through line to drive the plot and bring these different ideas and settings together. Everything gelled into an explorative adventure game with a dark tale at its heart, and so Sanitarium was born. Up till this point, Dreamforce already had a number of games under their belt, mostly role-playing titles set in pen and paper settings such as Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft. Sanitarium was their first foray into point-and-click adventuring territory, but with so much prior experience, it definitely helped shape the latest title, which was turning into quite the ambitious project. As development wore on, Sanitarium encountered a number of snags that brought about some production frustrations. One of the game's strong points, that of the whirlpool of ideas from different minds, led to newer members on the team feeling left out of the design process and desiring more input. On top of that, even though the publishers who were impressed with the game also began to chime in, they wanted to increase the game's mass appeal, and up to weeks from release they urged the team to make Sanitarium easier to play. Through trial and tribulation, Sanitarium's launch was deemed a success, sales-wise, critically, as well as raking in award nominations. The tale of an amnesiac waking up in an asylum after a car accident had gripped players in its web of intrigue. As you uncover more of the asylum secrets, you'll be thrust into a variety of settings with their own collection of puzzles. This is where the hodgepodge of ideas from the team becomes evident. I think it best to leave these locations as ambiguous as possible. It's worth discovering them for yourself, but I will say there's a host of odd locations that the team managed to wonderfully bind together into a cohesive narrative. At the core of Sanitarium you'll find the labours of an ambitious project, with engaging puzzles while being drip-fed bits and pieces of its mysterious plot. There's a whole lot worth discovering in this eerie adventure title. Over the years we've had gaming villains who went on to outshine their franchises. These memorable foes are worth their notoriety as they deserve to be remembered, and Showdown certainly stands among the original baddies of gaming. It's a strange tale how the System Shock sequel actually came together. A few years after the original title's release, 3 of its Looking Glass developers broke away to form Irrational Games. There was no animosity between the two studios, and so they got to work on a project together. Looking Glass approached Irrational with the proposition of using their Thief engine, while it was still in development, to make a science fiction game in contrast to their dark fantasy title. Unfortunately, the rise to System Shock was still tied to its publisher, Origin Systems. Using their knowledge gained from creating the first title, Irrational built their gameplay with a strong emphasis placed on interactions with objects as well as the environment, with the story being conveyed through recorded voice logs. While searching for a publisher, Electronic Arts took notice of the project. Since they owned Origin Systems and with it the rise to System Shock, they suggested the game be turned into System Shock 2. Everything came full circle. As the newest project was already using System Shock as a design basis, it took just a few modifications for the title to be reconfigured into the sequel that we know today. Showdown was back and more conniving than ever, but alongside our old foe, there is now also a new threat to contend with. A bioengineered hive mind calling itself the Many has infected the passengers of the Von Braun and the Rickenbacker with a mutagenic virus. Playing as an unnamed soldier, you'll be exploring these 2 ships while battling all manners of nasty enemies. Through the voice recordings, you'll get to experience how these poor souls steadily got twisted into the mutants that you'll be shooting and bashing your way through. It's a sad and horrific picture being painted behind the scenes. Opposite the fleshy mutations, you'll also need to deal with a whole range of robotic foes. As the Von Braun's crew fell to the Many, so too did the ship's AI Xerxes come under its control. This dual menace of blood and metal certainly makes for quite the challenge. Luckily for you, you come more than equipped to deal with this threat. With guns, hacking and psychic expertise at your fingertips, you'll find a variety of options to deal with any problem at hand. There's a whole assortment of options available to you when starting up a new game of System Shock 2. The more you play, the more you will learn and discover something new each time. With a vibrantly horrific world for you to explore, this is the worthwhile sequel to a classic that will leave you coming back for more. And so we drive a nail into this list of 5 chilling horror classics, each of a unique approach that has made the genre that much better. These are just some of my picks though. Are there any classic horror titles you feel are worth a mention? Comment down below and give myself and others some new titles to check out. Like the video to show the channel your support and subscribe for more top 5 videos, as well as classic and indie gameplay and recommended titles worth playing. Thank you for watching, keep on gaming, and I'll see you in the next one.